How you doing? All right? It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me along today. So we're going to be looking at strategies and interventions to enable autism-friendly audiology clinics. This is a new one for me, obviously. I've never been asked to do that before, but it came on the back of the Sanford Cascade Museum project in Lincolnshire, where I was asked if I could help to enable autism-friendly museums and visitor centres, which I agreed to do, but on the understanding that if we were going to do this, it wasn't going to be on once a month on a Sunday morning. We were going to have autism-friendly museums, and we've had a great lot of success in that. So what we've done here is really just pull in a few of the key points and adapted them to meet audiology clinics. So the objectives, we're going to be looking at communication, using visual communication, to build around the whole clinic experience, transport, arriving there, appointment times, tests, and looking at autism-friendly visual communication in and around the clinic. We're going to be looking at social and emotional, the difficulties facing autistic people when they visit an audiology clinic, and how to avoid uncomfortable situations. Lack of flexible thought. We used to call that rigid thinking. We don't do that anymore. But considering the need for structure and how the clinics themselves can effectively maintain that structure. And then finally, we're going to look at sensory needs. So the sensory environment, which really needs to meet the patient's hypersensitivity or hyposensitivity, so over and under sensitivity, and even looking at things like smells and noises and visual overload. I've chosen this to be the hat stand that we're hanging the ideas on today. This is the Olga Bogdashina's triad of impairments. If there's any mathematicians in the room, you'll see that Olga's triad has got 4 things in it. Don't let that bother you. So communication, social and emotional understanding, lack of flexible thought, and sensory. So we're going to start with communication. Communication in the autism world has to be explicit. We say there's no need to state the obvious, but in autism, we say, if it's obvious, state it. And so all in communication has to be explicit. Would you like to take a seat? Where? You know, it makes no sense. I could tell you a lovely story. Many years ago, I was in the car going up the motorway with my partner, and she said, Andrew, there's a services there. Do you need to stop? I said, no, I'm fine. So what was she really asking? Okay, she meant I need the toilet, but explicit communication was what I needed better. So now, really, you need to be saying things like, Malcolm, sit down. And I remember thinking that felt a bit rude to me. And there was a mother, many years ago, said, you're not being rude, Mr. Whitehouse, you're helping him. So really explicit communication is good. Autistic people tend not to be auditory verbal, they are visual. So talking lots to people with autism is not a good plan. And there's 2 lovely phrases. Of the 20 words you just said, I heard the first 3. Or I could sometimes hear a few words at the beginning, but the rest became a blur. So you want to be keeping that in mind. We don't want to be talking too much. We want to really be using visuals. And before you even get to the clinic, there are issues that need to be dealt with. Some autistic children might be refusing to engage with even going to the clinic. And this will be fear, this will be anxiety. And so we need to be taking them through situations using visual interventions that can make that trip more successful. So I've crossed out auditory, verbal, visual, all the way. Now, visual interventions are obviously really important to people with autism, and honestly, well, that's what people who don't hear need, isn't it? More visual interventions, or in my understanding. So there's things like this. This is a lovely visual that I use quite a lot. So I'm going to give you an example of something that I was asked to do some years ago. I use this visual so much that I actually think like this now. So I was asked to deliver some dyslexia workshops for some visiting architectural students from Nigeria and Egypt. And because I didn't really know an awful lot about architecture, and I didn't really know a lot about these people's culture, I was a little bit reluctant. I'd not worked with people from there before to do it. But then I started thinking, I can't do this. I want to do it. How will I do it? So what I did first was I made an appointment to go to the University of Lincoln and meet with the architectural department. I then met up with the Department for International Trade and investigated any cultural do's and don'ts that I needed to know for working with our visitors. That meant I felt that I can do it, and I will do it, and I've done it. Now, that kind of staged way of doing things is really, really helpful in autism. It's not good to fire too many instructions at them at once. With your kids, when you say, right, go upstairs, put clean pants on, clean socks, go to the toilet, brush your teeth, and all that stuff, and they get upstairs and they go, what the hell am I here for? So breaking things down into stages is a much better way of doing things. Before you even get there, for those of you who parked outside the Pullman over the last couple of days, I've been really struggling with the car parking machines. The technology's way, way beyond me. That's everywhere. That's everywhere you go. You need to work stuff out. So, sending out information. There is car parking available isn't enough. Do you need change? Do you need to pay by phone? Are you going to be able to pay for your ticket using your credit card? Are there buses? Are there trains? Is it trams? Or is it better to walk? That sort of information. That takes the anxiety out of the trip. A visual timetable. On the right here, this is a visual timetable. I've made visual timetables for all sorts of things. One of the crucial things about a visual timetable is it needs to be top to bottom. And the reason it's top to bottom is because people with autism often have limited peripheral vision, so that left to right or right to left thing doesn't work well for them. But you would have something on your visual timetable: arrive at clinic, tell receptionist I'm here, play with toys, read a book, listen for my name, follow the person. And I was thinking about this and I thought, this is all really well and good. But couldn't you, as people working in these clinics, couldn't you make a video? Wouldn't that be fun? That'd be great fun. You could take your phone out, film a video, send the links out. This is what our clinic looks like. This is the corridor that takes you. This is what I'm thinking of 2 or 3 places that I know that are audiology clinics, and the walk from the waiting room to the clinic, what the receptionist looks like. I thought that was a really, really lovely idea. And you could do that so easily and share it with people. Could you do the same for the examination? What does the clinical examination look like? Even now I have appointments and medical appointments, clinical appointments, and I don't know what they're going to do until I get there. I don't know what's going to happen. And that really can be a great cause for anxiety. So, could we film that? This is what it looks like. I think that you'd get a lot of really good results from that. Facial expressions, social emotional needs, the face. When I work in schools, one of the things I notice, particularly in secondary schools, is people they try to soften their emotions when they're talking to young people. So I'll give you an example. I've got a big smile on my face. I'm not very happy with you. Well, are you happy or are you unhappy because you're smiling at me? And it's really, really helpful if you communicate your facial expressions exactly what you're trying to put across. If you go into, so that was secondary schools, if you go into the foundation stage and see the little ones, foundation stage teachers are fantastic at this. Oh, Michael, you've made me very sad. Oh, Matthew, you've brought me a stick from the garden and it's still got a snail on it. Thank you. I will put it in my box of special things. Making those facial expressions clear. And we're back to, if it's obvious, please state it. If you're communicating pleasure, smile. If you're pleased with those kids, what they've done, how they've achieved, smile. And please, please, please don't insist on eye contact. The research, a lot of the research says that people with autism, when they're making eye contact, they will make contact at a 45-degree angle from your eyes. Well, as you know, with my 4-part triad of impairments, I'm not a mathematician. But I can pretty much work out that's your lips. Well, that makes perfect sense to me. That's where the sound comes from. Yeah? So don't be put out if people aren't looking at your eyes, making that kind of contact. They're looking at your lips. And again, we've got that connection with the hearing world, in some parts of the hearing world. Lack of flexible thinking. We used to call this rigid thinking, and then it became lack of flexible thought, and then it got abbreviated to flexible thinking, and it's the opposite of what it is. And the lack of flexible thought really is things like we always have chips on a Friday. Don't have hot and cold things together on a plate. Actually, to be honest with you, I think hot and cold things together on a plate is quite a sick concept. I really don't like it. And I think anyone who has hot apple pie and ice cream are depraved individuals. But that's just my... Anyone with me on that? No? You'll like it. It's just me, right? I had a roast dinner that had a salad garnish once, you know, really? But that kind of thing can really, really mess with a person with autism. I've got something in my bag here. So I've got my... What's he got in his bag? Well, I've been wandering around this conference. I always carry loads of stuff with me. So I picked this up yesterday. This is a blue Kit Kat. That's just wrong. You shouldn't have blue Kit Kats. My autistic friends really wouldn't like your blue Kit Kat. I did a conference once where they had bourbon creams with a white filling. Again, this is not the right thing. Believe me, these sorts of things, I've seen these cause all manner of problems over the years. Really, you think it's nothing, but it could be the most important thing in the world. Special interests. We used to call this obsessions. Special interests in autism is very, very much a hot topic. And people say, should we encourage them or should we discourage them? Well, I've come across all sorts of special interests. Mostly they're pretty good to work with. But the guy that was obsessed with dog poo, really that's one you'd be working, and I've got different strategies for that on a different day for getting dog poo out of his special interest pile. But if they're good special interests, and there's no problem with them, these are extremely useful for creating engagement. So I have a 6-year-old, and she's obsessed with pigs. She loves pigs. She has a very large collection of pigs. And if I was to let her take her pigs with her, she'd be a lot happy. She has a really good selection. So these two are stress ball pigs that she gives a little squeeze to when she's bothered. If you're aware of special interests, use these interests as a way to make connections and create interest. Again, I'm working with a young man who loves clowns. That's great. You know, we can do something around clowns. But how are you going to find out? Well, before your visit, can you put out some kind of questionnaire? Can you put in the letter, has your child any special interest? That'd be great if you could engage in conversation. This is a lovely way of doing things. This is a shoebox. I'm sure you've all seen one before. And it's got my special interests in there. My special interests are the most important things in the world, as far as I can tell. The Beatles, children's books I love, Star Trek, that's the Enterprise, which is the greatest of all spacecraft. Down there's Wigan Casino, Northern Soul All-Nighter patch. Anyone old enough to remember all that? Yeah, well done. And this is great. This is a really, really good thing. You know, could a child just put together a box of little things that make them happy to bring along with them? You'll get a lot of mileage out of that, an awful lot of mileage. Just out of interest, if they don't want to engage, I didn't have time to make that box. And so I got my kids, a couple of my kids, I said, would you put a shoebox together of some of Daddy's things that Daddy likes? So we got the wooden spoon because I do a lot of cooking and things like that. And they did it. So you could do it in a way where someone else is making their impression of what those interests are. You know, it doesn't have to be the child themselves, but that's a great way of doing things. Lack of generalization skills. When I was when I was first working with autism, and I was a young teacher, and one of my favourite things we used to do was we'd go out on a trip, and we'd go out on a trip to the supermarket, and the supermarket trip was my absolute favourite. We used to go on a minibus, and everyone would have a shopping list of maybe one thing, a broccoli or something like that, and we'd come back and do some cooking. And we'd get to the supermarket, and the kids would all run off and start playing on the computer games and all the rest of it. And it was just good fun. And one day, I thought, for a change, we won't go to Tesco's. For fun, let's go to Safeway. For those posh people in the room, Safeway is what became Waitrose. And you just didn't get your free coffee back then. And we went to Safeway instead. Does anyone know what happened on our trip to Safeway, just for a change, for fun? Very bad things. We came out of the school, we came down the road a little bit, and it was straight on to Tesco's, turn left to Safeway, and the bus went the wrong way. That caused a little bit of panic, and then when we actually got to the supermarket, there were some people there who thought it was the most exciting thing ever, a different supermarket, and they were running around. Other people lying on the floor beating their fists. And it was, you know, they just didn't want to go in, some of them. Now, for me, people have been saying, are you going to go and have a look on the stage? Are you going to have a look, see what it's like? Well, one stage, if you do a lot of talks, is pretty much the same as another to me. And so I've not been really too bothered. But for these young people, that difference could be really, really important to them to know. So even if they've been to one clinic, it's not going to be the same as another clinic. So every experience needs to be approached as new, or if it's the same clinic and a different person. So we're going to have a game of What's My Mammal? Keep an eye on the time. Okay, so you've got to get engaged with this. You're quite quiet. I know there was an awful lot of people in the casino last night and celebrating the Liverpool Festival of Debauchery, but you're going to have to get with me on this. So we're going to start it off nice and easy. Can you call out for me, what kind of animal is this?
Puppy.
Dog. Puppy, which is a kind of dog. Right. You were quite good. Let's do another one, right? What kind of animal is this?
Dog.
Brilliant. You're quite good at this. We'll do one more. What kind of animal is this? Dog. Who said rat? Well, it's interesting because I knew somebody, an autistic person, who saw one of those for the first time. This is an autistic adult, and thought it was a cat. So you weren't too far off with rat. How do we know when something's a dog? Any psychologists in the room? Put your hands up. Well done. Well done. Schemas. We build up information on top of information, on top of information, on top of information, and we go dog. I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, I don't know, but my working is that we don't even really have to think about it. We just know it's a dog because we put all that information together. A person with autism might need a strategy, and this guy that I'm talking about needed a strategy. So what he did was he would say, dogs have got dog noses. And this guy's called Wen, and I said, Wen, bears have got noses like that. And he said, yeah, but English people don't keep bears as pets. So this is autism logic. Just for fun, by the way, I have to share, this is not part of the workshop. These pictures came from a website called dognoses.com. There's something on the internet for everybody, isn't there? It's a fabulous place. Okay, no surprises. Boom, pow. Surprises are not, I mean, this is all pie in the sky stuff really, isn't it? Because you can't avoid surprises in life, you know, things do happen. You will get there, you will work out the car parking, and then, you know, someone will have parked a truck where you were going to park your car. We know this, or that, you know, there will be all sorts of things going on. But, you know, if you can possibly avoid surprises, that would be great. even to the point where there's going to be a different clinician on that morning. Can you drop a text? Can you drop a text with a photo of that person saying your clinician's going to be that? And you're sitting on the bus with that person, or the parents will be sitting on the bus with that person going, this is your clinician this morning. She's called Mary, and she's going to be looking after you because Dave's not there. You know, lots and lots and lots of information if you can. Avoiding those surprises. It reminds me that I took my partner away for her 50th birthday, and it was a surprise trip. How much notice do you think I had to give for a surprise trip? About 3 weeks. She had to get her hair done, get something, you know. Some people just don't like it, but in this world, it really isn't the done thing. Sensory. So, I was a bit misleading when we talked about the triad of impairments at the beginning. The triad of impairments in autism came from a lady called Lorna Wing, and it's the 3 on the outside, and she came up with that, I think, in 1976. And then in 2003, a lady called Olga Bogdashina added sensory. So it's like a triad with a bit in the middle, really. And Olga argues that sensory is the most important consideration in supporting young autistic people. Sensory underpins everything. So are there any parents in the room familiar with the phrase, shut up, I'm trying to think? Yeah, that's the sensory thing, isn't it? Can I just ask, who were the people running around in the corridors at 7 o'clock last night, all drunk, and nobody's fessing up, right? But that was a sensory experience for me. Kind of, actually, it was a funny one. I was kind of laughing because I was all smug because I'd not been drinking. I was going to wake up all right. But that sensory thing underpins absolutely everything. So things to be aware of: noise, smells, single attention, and overstimulation. Right, so we'll start with noise. What is a little, so I can hear, I think there's a projector somewhere I can hear, and it's humming. For some people with autism, as with some people with hearing loss, that could be like a jet engine firing up, that noise. There was one of my pieces of technology in the night, about every half hour, kept buzzing. And that, in the small hours, can really sort of drive you crazy. You know how loud the quietest noises can be in the night. Smells. I'm going to talk to you about a condition called hangry in a little bit, which is a real condition. But smells can be quite tricky for people. I was told by an autistic boy, you smell like my dad after he's been to the pub. I had been to the pub the night before, you know. And then we have children with autism who, in schools, they have big boxes full of all the kids' jumpers, and they throw their sweaty jumpers in after playtime. And I've met more children that can pick up a jumper and go, it's Michael's, Stacey's, and passing out these jumpers, and they can sniff them out. You know, it's quite incredible. And one child with autism who I met could smell your armpit and tell you what your last meal was. That was about 15 years ago, and I'm still trying to work out a really good use for that. You know, drug enforcement at the airport. Is your environment noisy? I went to have a hearing test recently, and there was a lot of noise. It was in a high street hearing centre, and there was a lot of noise from the shop outside, you know. And that's kind of interesting because it can be very difficult to concentrate. Smells. Is there a cafe nearby? Can appointments be arranged to miss lunch times? Now we've got hangry. Hangry is a real condition. It's caused by the brain releasing a chemical called neuropeptide Y. And what it is if you're hungry, it kind of, in its simplest form, puts you in a bit of a bad mood until you eat something. And I don't eat between meals, so I will have my lunch at 12, then I've got to go somewhere else and do another talk, and then go back to Lincoln where I live. I'll be at home for about 9 o'clock, so I won't be eating till for about 9 hours, and people will be trying to hand me biscuits like I'm some kind of dog, right? Do you smell? Do you smell? We used to say in special education, don't wear perfume, don't wear aftershave. Yeah, you're not there to smell nice. You're not there to smell bad either. For these kids, it could be a real overpowering thing. Now, in autism, we talk about a thing called single attention. So us guys, we've got divided attention, most of us. We can do more than one thing at a time. In autism, it's single attention. They do one thing. So if they're bothered by a smell or a noise or any of these things, then you're gonna have the possibility that that's going to cause difficulties for them, that they're going to be concentrating on the smell. And so if they've got those headphones on where they're listening to the sounds that you're playing to them and something smells, they're not going to be listening to that stuff. Overstimulation. So is there a timeout area when it becomes too difficult for them? Is there somewhere we can go? Everybody should have a shed, right? Yeah? Everybody needs to go and hide. And so is there something you can do like that? Just, it could be anything. I've seen all sorts of stuff over the years. Big cardboard boxes that people can go and sit in, blankets over tables, you know, little Wendy house somewhere, anything like that, just so when you can go and gather your thoughts, yeah? For me, as a gentleman, I like to spend quality time on my throne, just gathering my thoughts of a morning. That works for me. People with autism, I said, do not multitask. They have single attention. Please only make one sensory demand at a time. I seem to recall being in a clinic and hearing, not me, but one of my children, and having to listen to stuff and look for a dancing clown. And maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but whether I am or not, it doesn't matter, because the point of looking for the dancing clown and listening is too much for a person with autism to be able to deal with. The headphones, are they intrusive? Is the sound too close? Now the headphones, they could be one of two things. It could be, as I say, that the sound is too close. It could be that the pressure of what to me would feel like nothing could be quite painful and bothersome and sensory, that it just could be too much for them. Is it worth, in those situations, playing the sounds through loudspeakers first to say, this is what we're going to be listening out for, so have a little listen, we're going to practice this, and then maybe we'll put the headphones on, we'll have another go so they know what's coming. And then I thought, is that another opportunity to make a video of those things, you know, of what's going on? I think so. I think that would be quite good. I like this. Part of my spec was to talk about what you can do on Monday. So, Monday morning, when you get in, a little bit of role play with your colleagues. Let's film some sequences, yeah? Let's add some visual timetables. Remember, our visual timetables go top to bottom, yeah, to your appointment letters about what's going to happen. So instead of just sending out the letter with text, send out the letter with a visual timetable for the child. Remember to use explicit communication. One easy way of remembering that is to speak in the positive all the time. So I've not got a cup of tea here, but just imagine I've got a cup of tea in my hand and I'm drinking my tea and I put it down. Don't put that there, Andrew. Yeah? I will pick it up and I'll say, well, I don't know where to put my cup of tea. Try to speak in the positive. Use a coaster, Andrew. Use visual prompts wherever possible. I read something the other day that visual can be processed 60,000 times faster than text. I would love to know how they measured that. I mean, I reckon someone's made it up, but it's a good metaphor. And fact find about your visitors to your clinic. Questionnaires would be a good way of starting that. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for inviting me to your conference to speak. I've really enjoyed working with you. If you do want to come and see me about anything, I'd be very, very happy to talk to you. Thank you. Thank you.